Welcome back to my channel, Madden Backlog series. Today's Madden 24 bug video is substitutions and packages. Before we get too deep into this, please click the like icon, click the subscribe and notification icon so you will be informed when a new video has been posted. Substitutions and packages bugs. You would think by now, Madden 24, that these issues would be gone, but they're not. Now, I'm going to use an example of a formation that I have to now manually create, as opposed to it being in the playbook or one of the formations in a playbook. And the play that used to be in there had a tight end in the backfield. So it was a 3 wide receiver, 1 tight end, 1 running back. And it allowed for a lot of variations for me with regard to audibling out of that formation, let's say to gun wide trips or gun bunch or whatever, as well as being able to audible to that formation. Let's say if I thought that I was going to deal with a blitz and I could bring the tight end back into the backfield and do a max protect, let's say. With that said, I will first show you the bugs that involve packages. Split slot open is the formation I've added to my playbook along with the variety of plays that it has in it. I felt it was the best variety of plays. I want you to pay close attention to wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, and the slot position. Now in this formation you do have a halfback 1 and halfback 2, but my main focus is going to be on the wide receiver positions. When we look at the fullback package, it really doesn't tell you too much. It just says fullback. So obviously you do see the fullback substituted in for HB2. But the problem with that is slot and wide receiver 2 positions have now swapped. So that package name really doesn't tell you the full story unless you've created that package, because in other places within the game that might not happen. With the halfback slot package, it not only moves the HB1 to the slot, but it also substitutes the fullback into halfback 2. And also it had swapped out the slot wide receiver out to wide receiver 2, and wide receiver 2 now is not in the game. That's not in that description. Wide receiver 2 slot actually does a wide receiver swap between wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2. You'll see why that's important later on. Wide receiver swap actually swaps the slot receiver with wide receiver 2. Wide receiver 1 slot actually does it the right way. It swaps the wide receiver 1 into the slot and the slot over to wide receiver 1. Tight end slot package moves the tight end into the slot position, moves the slot out to wide receiver 1, and moves wide receiver 1 to wide receiver 2, and now wide receiver 2 is no longer in the game. tight end to the backfield, again, it rotates the wide receiver position, and it's not self-describing. Now, wide receiver 2 is in the slot. Slot is in wide receiver 1. Wide receiver 1 is in wide receiver 2 position, and the tight end is moved into the halfback 2 position. This is the formation that I want, but it will allude to the substitution problem that I ran into that I'll show you after this. Backup QB does a similar thing as a tight end backfield, where it rotates the wide receivers clockwise. So it moves your slot over to wide receiver 1, wide receiver 1 to wide receiver 2, wide receiver 2 to the slot. And of course, it substitutes in a backup quarterback. Dual halfback swap does the same thing, where it does that clockwise rotation of the wide receivers. Slot goes to wide receiver 1, wide receiver 1 goes to wide receiver 2, wide receiver 2 goes to the slot. But the main thing that happens is that it swaps the two running back positions. Halfback 2 to the slot. So that substitutes in a fullback at the halfback 2 position. Halfback 2 now moves down to the slot, and the wide receiver that was in the slot has moved to wide receiver 1. And wide receiver 1 has now moved over into wide receiver 2 slot. So it almost seems like every time there is some type of substitution in, the wide receivers go through like a clockwise rotation, and then that substitution is made. That's the pattern that I see. Okay, let's reset the package back to its default and set the package to tight end backfield. From there, I will show you the substitution issue. I'm going to add this graphic so that you can see the 6 wide receivers I have to choose from. And keep in mind, when you're doing a substitution, you're going to choose a player that's in that package to replace. Then you're going to choose the new player for him to come in and substitute for. So let me choose my first substitution. You see the 3 wide receivers, they're all in the game. And I'm going to choose one of these 3 to replace. I'm going to choose Cooks. Now this is fine because these 3 wide receivers are all on the sideline. So there's no problem there. I can pick one. I'll pick Turpin. Now I'm going to choose my second wide receiver to replace, and it's going to be Gallup. But the problem is the choice of a new wide receiver shouldn't be Lamb because he's already in there. And there are only 3 wide receivers to choose from, which means Brandon Cooks, who was already put on the sideline, is not available. So I have to put someone else there. So I'll put Tolbert. So you saw the bug right there. I'm going to go ahead and finish out the substitution, which is a long way. I'll substitute Lamb with Gallup. I'll take Jalen Tolbert and replace in Brandon Cooks, who now appears. And then I'll go over to Turpin and replace him with Lamb. But see, I should not have to go through all of that to replace these players through substitution. It should be a very direct swap. But in here, sometimes players are disappearing from the board. Also, please make sure you help to get the word out by sharing this video. No monetization, is involved here. I'll check back with you later.